out hope, along with so many other families who have held up hope that the captives would be released at some point safely. And this word just now confirmed that Judith Raanan, 59, Natalie Raanan, 17 years old. They are U.S. citizens, U.S. and Israeli. They're from Evanston, Illinois, outside Chicago. They have been released and are safe. And again, that was the most important thing for us in coming on the air. We wanted to make sure that they were in safe hands. And I've just been told from our editorial team here that they are now in the hands of the Red Cross. We know that Hamas is holding more than 200 hostages, including more than 20 children among them. Israel believes most are still alive. This news about these 2 Americans released comes just as Israel appears to be on the brink of launching this ground incursion into Gaza, which would, of course, take this war into a new phase, raise the stakes on the growing humanitarian crisis facing Palestinian civilians caught in the middle, Palestinian civilians who, of course, are not Hamas. But again, the breaking headline at this hour, 2 American hostages are now in the hands, the safe hands of the Red Cross. Their names, Judith Raanan, 59 years old, Natalie Raanan, 17 years old. And again, that powerful image you see right there, that is believed to be just after Natalie's high school graduation. It is believed this afternoon that they are safe. An extraordinary development. Let's get to our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, also following. He has late reporting. What have you learned, Ian?
Yeah, that's right, David. So the names that you confirmed, apparently from Evanston near Chicago. And you're right that apparently they were over in Israel just visiting relatives. We believe an elderly grandmother who may have been celebrating her birthday. There was a statement from Hamas, which we have been able to verify, in response to Qatari efforts. And I think that's absolutely crucial because we've been talking about negotiations involving third parties. The Qataris have very close relationships with Hamas. In fact, Hamas has an office in Doha, in Qatar. And so they're an obvious interlocutor. They're also a country that provides funding that goes through Israel into Gaza. They're saying in response to Qatari efforts, Hamas, or they've referred to their military wing, the Al-Qassam brigades, have released 2 American citizens, a mother and a daughter, for humanitarian reasons, they say. And they also go on to make a political statement to say that this is to prove to the American people the statements that have been made by the Biden administration are false. It's not clear to me what statements they mean. We're saying they've been handed over to Red Cross. It's potentially going to be the Red Crescent, same organization, just slightly different name to reflect the religion of the region. Questions now about what direction they would necessarily be heading in, and we'll wait to learn facts about that. The border on the Israeli side, the Erez crossing, is firmly closed, so one imagines that it's more likely to head they're more likely to head across into Egypt. But we know there have been complex negotiations about that border opening. But this is huge. This is an enormous breakthrough. You know, we spoke earlier today to the son of one of those hostages, 71, Chaim Perry, and he was really concerned because he felt that the Israeli government wasn't going to prioritize the release of the hostages. He took great comfort from what President Biden said when he came to Israel, when he said that hostages were the #1 priority. And there is that inbuilt tension because for Israel, they've made it clear again and again to our colleague Matt Gutman and to others, and I've heard this as well from Israeli sources, that their priority is to try and dismantle Hamas, and that actually the concerns of the hostages will come second. President Biden made it clear it's their primary. Now, is this a breakthrough? Will this lead to further hostages being released? We'll have to wait and see. It's an important peace offering, something that the Qataris potentially have lent on Hamas for. Interestingly, it's been very, very quiet here over the last few hours, and that may well be part of the picture of what we're seeing. Hamas was very clear that it would release some women, children, men of foreign nationalities if the conditions allowed. And they weren't entirely clear, but of course we know what they want is a cessation to the bombing. So, you know, as I say, things have been quiet on this side. The bombing has continued on the other side, but hugely complicated. How do you get someone out? Just 2 people. There are hundreds of foreign nationals, including Americans, waiting on that border, also desperate to get out. The aid on the other side. But it sends a very important signal. And I think this is going to put much more pressure on the Israeli government to slow down this possible military advance. for the United States government and the other foreign governments. They will now put pressure on Israel to say, well, look, Hamas is willing to release some of these hostages potentially. There is some kind of negotiation that we could get into there. It's something that Hamas will want, and it's absolutely not something that Israel will want to engage in until it has removed the threat from Hamas. There's an inbuilt tension there, but certainly for this family and their loved ones who apparently have been notified, this is great news.
Ian Panel, on the extraordinary development here this afternoon. Ian, stay with us here. I do want to bring our viewers up to speed, those of you who might just be joining us. ABC News live coverage, major development coming out of Israel at this hour. 2 American hostages have been released. We waited to go on the air with this information until we knew their names, knew that they were safe, and knew that their family had been notified. It's our belief all 3 are now true. Judith Raanan, 59 years old, Natalie Raanan, 17 years old, have been released. They are in the hands of the Red Cross at this hour. Their image right there on the screen. The Associated Press reporting that this image came just after Natalie's graduation. You heard Ian report there. They were in Israel visiting family for the Jewish holiday, celebrating their grandmother's birthday when the massacre began to play out. It's believed that Natalie, obviously on the right there, the youngest of the 2, had made contact with family members during the attack, saying that she was going to, and it was a familiar message that we've heard reported out from so many families, that they were going to lock themselves in and protect themselves. That was the last word the family heard from them until now. They have now heard that their 2 family members are alive and safe and with the Red Cross. And as Ian pointed out there, this now, as we would imagine, of course, we have to report this out throughout the day, this puts a certain amount of pressure on Israel and whether or not they would actually move forward with this potential ground invasion, knowing that there's been this major development. Will this pause whatever the military plan is, given the fact that there has been now significant movement on the front of these hostages, which has been a concern not only here in the U.S., but around the world? I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, because, Mary, we can only imagine what this family is going through now, learning the news of their loved ones, these 2 Americans freed. The kind of hope this now gives so many other families. And regardless of Hamas's message that's been attached to this, the White House must be at least somewhat relieved here that the president's tough words involving Hamas, that the world is watching and waiting for word on these hostages. Hopeful, the White House, I'm sure, believes that those words might have helped at least with these 2 Americans, and certainly hopeful more of the hostages will now be released.
And David, no official comment yet from the White House, but as you say, this is certain to be welcome news for this administration. The president has made clear all along, including last night in his rare Oval Office address, that there is no higher priority for this president, for this administration, than the safety of these American hostages. The president has actually intentionally said that he isn't going to detail publicly too much about the process to try and get these Americans back home. He said last week that that would actually be counterproductive, that it might actually put Americans at risk. But what we do know is that the U.S. has been working closely with partners that have influence over Hamas, and that the U.S. has been working closely with the Israelis, providing intelligence and U.S. experts in these matters to try and aid these recovery efforts. Now, when it comes to the hostages, the U.S. has been blunt, this administration being quite frank about the fact that they've known very little throughout the last 2 weeks about the condition of these hostages, where they've been being held. We've been told just that there are a small handful of them. So, of course, this will be welcome news for this administration and a sign, I'm sure, that they will be hopeful that others may also be released. That is our suspicion while we wait for any kind of official word here at the White House, David.
One more question before we go here, Mary, and this comes back to you. We heard from Martha Raddatz's reporting over the last couple of days that from a senior U.S. official that behind the scenes, we know that President Biden very publicly standing with Israel, saying the administration is with them, and of course that major foreign aid package he's now proposed to help defend Israel, to help them defend themselves, the Iron Dome, et cetera. Martha has been reporting that behind the scenes there was a gentle warning, a reminder of what happened after 9/11 in this country, with this ground invasion potentially imminent here. Of course, and I know this isn't an easy question to answer, but the question would be, is this White House going to now signal again to Israel, particularly with the movement on this front, 2 American hostages now released, whether or not to slow down whatever this military plan is to try to get the other hostages out?
It is a very good question. I mean, this administration has been very clear and open in cautioning Israel not to essentially overreact here. We heard the president when he was on the ground during that visit earlier this week in Israel saying, you know, that while Israel has the right to be, of course, furious and angry, but not to be blind in their rage and to be deliberate in their actions here. I think we all know that Israel is readying this ground invasion. When that will happen, how this may impact, you know, this administration's message to the Israelis as they prepare for this next step remains to be seen. But certainly it is part of that balancing act that we have seen here from this administration. The president standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel while also trying to, of course, do everything they can to provide humanitarian assistance to those in Gaza. In fact, David, just a short while ago, I asked the president here at an event in the cabinet room when that aid, when those roughly 20 trucks will be finally allowed to get into Gaza to provide these humanitarian supplies. And he told me that he believes that within the next 24 to 48 hours, we will see that crossing open. We will see those trucks and that aid begin to get into Gaza.
Mary Bruce, our chief White House correspondent, at her post there at the White House. Before we go, let's show you, let's go full with this image, if we can, of the two Americans that have been freed so that you can see at home. Judith Raanan, 59 years old. To her right, Natalie Raanan, 17 years old, on the right of our screen there, both U.S. citizens. Again, 2 weeks after that horrific massacre in Israel. And as the world watches, and with so many of these families waiting for word on their loved ones, the first word coming in, the first hostages to be released are these two Americans. Again, they have family, and it's believed roots back in Illinois, in a Chicago suburb. It's believed they live there, actually in Evanston, Illinois. We'll continue to report this out throughout the afternoon. We can only imagine this news and what this must mean for that family waiting for word. And of course, our thoughts are now with all of the other families still waiting. Our coverage is going to continue here on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. And of course, I'll be back with the entire team for World News Tonight just a short time from now. I'll see you later this afternoon. Until then, good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.